on data from the Human Rights Campaign, it's estimated that there are over 2 million transgender individuals in the United States. And somewhere around 1 in 5 adults knows someone who's non-binary or uses they/them pronouns. Something that we may not think about is that Jesus probably knew people that didn't identify with their gender binary. They probably just used terms that are a little different than what we would use today. As we know, Jesus was a Palestinian Jew who was really a product of his faith. Many of our Christian beliefs, traditions, and holy books come from some of the same Jewish traditions that Jesus would have learned in his time. The Mishnah, or an authoritative text of oral traditions in the Jewish faith, describes about half a dozen identities that are between male and female. Although these terms may provide a refreshing view that binary ideas of gender are probably relatively new to Judaism and Christianity, a closer look shows that preference was still given to those who appeared male or masculine. Far from being a new phenomenon, transgender and non-binary people have existed since probably the beginning of human history, and they're found across cultures, across the globe, across time. I'm Aries Ramirez, and this is Season 2 of Community Connections, a series where we learn more about communities around us and how we can be a better advocate to them using teachings of the Bible. Today we're going to be learning more about the transgender community across cultures, and talk about how the Bible may affirm more than a gender binary. While issues facing the transgender and non-binary communities have received recent attention from the public, policymakers, and the government, the earliest record of transgender people in human history comes from about 5,000 BC. Around 5,000 to 3,000 BC, ancient Sumerians had the societal role of a gala, described as androgynous or trans priests of Sumerian goddess Inanna. These people spoke their own dialect and sometimes took on feminine names. In ancient Greece, from 200 to 300 BC, some gods were worshipped by Gali priests who wore feminine attire, identified as women, and have therefore been identified by scholars as early transgender figures. In the 4th century, Anastasia the Patrician fled life in Constantinople, the capital of the Roman Empire, to spend the remainder of her life dressed masculinely as a monk, and has been viewed by some scholars as a transgender man. In South Asia, at least 8 known gender expansive identities have historically been present in the whole subcontinent, the most well-known being Hijras, third gender people of historical, spiritual, and cultural significance in South Asian society. Hijra and individuals of diverse gender identities have been well documented in religious and cultural texts, even their legends. These individuals often form intentional communities for the community as well as survival. Around the 18th century, the Ottomans of Siberia recognized a third gender called koekchuch to describe individuals who are assigned male at birth but express themselves as women. The oldest Western institute studying LGBTQ+ identities was started in Germany in 1919. The Institute for Sex Research performed some of the earliest contemporary gender-affirming medical services. This German institute also provided cards to transgender individuals to allow them to wear the clothes that they identified with on the streets of Germany. It was eventually destroyed, though, during the rise of German fascism under the Nazi Party. On Turtle Island, one of the many indigenous names for North America, indigenous communities use the term Two-Spirit as a modern, pan-indigenous umbrella identifier for people of another societal and ceremonial gender identity. This term was established in 1990 as a modern collective term for a historical gender identity describing individuals not considered men or women in most, if not all, indigenous cultures of Turtle Island. The notion of a third gender, or mahu, is a part of Polynesian culture. It can mean a gender between male and female, or gender fluid. In Hawaii and Tahiti, the Mahu people were highly respected in native culture as keepers of oral traditions and historical knowledge. It's also important to remember that the lives of LGBTQ+ people were different in cultures outside of Europe. When people talk about gender in the Bible, they usually start at the beginning, with Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 says, "So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." Some people take this as an affirmation of a gender binary, and to enforce that people shouldn't live outside of the binary. But in the same section, we see terms like evening and morning used to encompass all times of the day. And somehow using these two words to describe specific times of the day doesn't mean that other times don't exist. It simply means that those words are used to describe those and everything in between. So why can't this apply to the way that God describes gender in the Bible? Is it so hard to believe that the whole spectrum of gender identities could be encompassed by these two words as well? The usage of male and female doesn't limit the existence of diverse gender identities. It may actually be used to cover all the genders in one easy sweep. Margaret Moore's Wenig, an American rabbi, LGBTQ+ advocate, and professor, suggests that we shouldn't read this verse as God created every human as either male or female, but rather God created humankind, male and female, and every combination in between. When we think about the existence of transgender, intersex, and non-binary individuals, it's clear that this idea of a gender binary simply isn't sufficient or accurate anymore. And it might as well be considered dishonest to the diverse ways that people are created in God's image. All in all, gender identity and expression isn't new, but the stigma around it is. It's our calling to aid our transgender community members. And we can do this by simply expanding our resources. One way is to donate to our chest binder and gaff drive, which directly supports access to gender-affirming care for transgender and non-binary people. You can also join in on our LGBTQ+ Allyship 101 training that starts in September. Here you can learn how to be a real ally and stand in solidarity with the LGBTQ+ community. We're in dire need of changes to an oppressive system which is actively harming transgender individuals. God created us as we are in all of our forms, and we need to work together to protect God's beautiful creations. If you want to learn more about these opportunities to support the trans community, go ahead and check the link in the description box below to get active. I hope to see you next time, and thank you so much for watching.